continue that charge. It feels eerily similar to last year when Cashman was on the outside looking in during the sprint and needed a huge event performance to kind of keep her weekend alive. And that's exactly what she did today. I think we all knew she was going to do well in the handstand hold because of her background as a gymnast. And she stated repeatedly that as a kid growing up, she was basically on her hands 24/7. But to go full send in Nasty Nancy was certainly impressive. Justin, we talked about it in IG Live that she's a sneaky good runner when you start to mix in that mixed modality. And then it really came down to how she'd be able to cycle the barbell. And she took care of business. And now she looks pretty firmly entrenched in the top 5.
Yeah, I'm going to just the stats here. She took two number 1 finishes. She's 101 points back from Tia Toomey, but it looks like she's got 414 points altogether and about, 32 points inside of the qualifying position away from Amanda Barnhart. This is a really, really strong position going into the final event. Armen, what about you?
I'm going to take the easy one, man. Matt Fraser, sub 18 on Nasty Nancy. Are you kidding me? Are you seriously just writing a joke about how fit this guy can be? What type of machine is he at this point? I think that is one of the more impressive things we've seen, and that is considering less than 24 hours ago we saw him go 308 on Friendly Fran. So I'm just really blown away with how consistent and dominant both Matt and Tia have been. This is just the icing on the cake. And I mean, when we talk about unexpected events, that freestanding handstand hold was definitely a curveball. I think a lot of athletes weren't expecting. You can tell the athletes that have spent a little bit of more time on their hands trying those static holds versus the ones who haven't. And surprise, surprise, Matt Fraser, second place, 2 seconds behind Noah Olson with that first place finish in that event.
Yeah. Matt Fraser having another stellar day, when it comes down to it. I mean, what has he got? A first place and a second place finish to kick it off for day 2. 3 first place finishes overall. There's not really, we don't really have anything more that we can say about him except that he is, 99 points ahead of Noah Olson, who's in number 2. But I am extremely impressed with Noah Olson because, he had this phenomenal year last year. And he finally did, I think he matured as an athlete to the point where he wasn't taking those big risks that caused him to kind of stumble down the leaderboard. And he was being really poised in these situations where he needed to not get over eager, and I think that's kind of how I would describe it. But I'm looking at this and going, you know what, this is a wildly consistent performance. He had a couple of, I don't want to say slip ups, but areas like, he didn't kill the row and I wasn't expecting him to. He got 17th place, but then he comes back and he has a 7th and then a 1st. And, 99 points behind Matt Fraser. Look, that is say, if you keep it within 100, you're doing pretty dang good right now, I feel like.
You're better than like 90% of the athletes he's gone up against at the CrossFit Games. So that's saying a lot. It's funny because I think, for some of the athletes like Noah, the classic CrossFit inside the gym type stuff is usually where they excel. And then, we were all talking about this a while back, is that the single modality tests like the squat and the row were the only things that really, could potentially hurt him. But I've been impressed with the damage control that he's done and how he's been able to mitigate his points loss in those events, given that you're going to see some specialists show up and kind of shake up the leaderboard. Even with those and considering he's only got one finish in the bottom half of the field, when basically every athlete besides Matt Fraser has a finish in the bottom half of the field, and then he's able to capitalize and get an event win and some top 3 finishes as well. I mean, that's like prime. If you're a top level athlete like Noah looking to make it back, that's execution as far as a seasoned veteran goes.
One thing I want to point out here, I'm going to put the leaderboard up here for a second. This was, or actually I want to do the overall standings here. I want to point something out. Number 1, shout out to Noah Olson for getting his 2nd ever CrossFit Games event win with a handstand hold.
Oh, yeah.
But number two, it's, Fraser essentially doesn't need to do anything to qualify at this point. He is now just shy of 200 points ahead of 5th place Janikowski, and Noah Olson is 99 points ahead, 99 points ahead of second or of the fifth place. And so, really these athletes essentially are in, and, we would call that they've got their playoff berth essentially locked up, which is kind of cool. Usually Fraser is at this stage of the game, but usually we don't have two athletes coming into the final that are that far ahead. And to Noah's credit, I mean, they are both that far ahead.
Yeah.
And
sorry, one thing I definitely want to point out about Noah's performances, those lower finishes, his front squat and his row, were actually big PRs for him as well. So what we're looking at is a very sharpened Noah Ohlsen, a guy who's performing better than he's ever performed before. And you can tell, I mean, like you said, Justin, it is not easy to have locked up your spot with one event remaining. That is a very Matt Fraser-esque or Tia-Clair Toomey-esque type performance. And here we are with Noah Ohlsen basically doing that type of thing.
Yeah. As long as Matt finishes the event and doesn't get a DNF, he'll get 1 point for last place finish, which is enough to put him in a points tie with Noah, assuming he wins, and he gets the tiebreaker. So he's officially clinched, assuming he finishes. So
I don't think that's going to happen.
Wouldn't that be hilarious, though?
It would be very 2020. It would be very 2020.
If Matt consciously says, "I'm going to give you the points tie, but I know I have the tiebreaker, so I'm going to win anyway."
That would be a very 2020-esque thing to do. All right. I want to show the overall leaderboard here for the women, because here's something I didn't see happen, and I don't know about you guys, but I wasn't predicting this one coming up when it was all said and done. I got to go there, Tommy, because you and I have been having this one out on our Slack channel here. But that's Haley Adams goes from a 26th place finish in Event 2's front squat, 1 rep max front squat, catapults up by having, consistently improving performances. She had a 12th place finish in Event 3, 6th place in Event 4, and then 2 back-to-back 4th place finishes in Events 5 and 6 this morning to bring her not just well within, or not just within striking distance, but well within a qualifying spot. That is my number one biggest surprise of any of the athletes, because to be fair, she had to do something remarkable. And that in looking at her performance so far, it is pretty remarkable that she's come back from what was, I don't know, I think she was in 19th or 20th place going after Event 2. You didn't have faith in it. I called it. I called it when we were talking.
Sure. Yeah. I'll give credit where credit's due. I thought that given that she had a bottom 5 finish and another finish outside of the top 10, I thought with the way the field typically is in the women's side, that would be enough to keep you out. I did not foresee the volatility of the leaderboard, and basically every woman except for Gabby Magala, Brooke Wells, and Tia has a finish outside of the top 20. So Gabby just has multiple finishes in that 10 to 20 range. That's why she's not in the hunt. But everyone else has a bottom finish like that. So it didn't end up hurting her that bad. And then the rest of the remaining events outside of those 2 finishes have been a top 5 average. So, she's proven she can take a few licks and just keep punching. So.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth pointing out with how competitive the women's field almost always is, like arguably more competitive than the men's field. It's certainly deeper.
Oh yeah.
You would expect it, and I see Tommy's point. Like you'd expect a bottom 5 finish to be a death sentence to kind of make it through to this qualifying spot. But to me, reading these results, it just goes to show, I thought that while Haley is supremely fit, her lack of leg strength was going to be enough to bury her in the standings. And yet it just turns out she's so much fitter than the average quote unquote CrossFit Games athlete in her division that even being below, several standard deviations below the mean when it comes to her front squat makes no difference, because she's that much better than everybody else at everything.
She's like a baby Sam Briggs. Like she can overcome the leg strength and the top end strength output to just light some events on fire and keep herself in that hunt for the top 5.
21 years old. She's got a lot of growing still to do as an athlete. I mean, she came in not, and you look at athletes' trajectory of strength, and 21 is not their peak, especially when you look at other strength-based sports like Olympic weightlifting, and athletes who have been particularly strong and successful when they're young have literally a decade to grow into that strength. Now, it doesn't translate. You wouldn't say 31 years old is going to be your peak as a CrossFit Games athlete, but look at the Games athletes' ages that are here at the top. Tia is one of the younger athletes. In fact, Brooke is still very young, but
very young.
Like Matt's 29 years old. Holt is 33 years old, and she's in 5th place. Amanda Barnhart, I think she's 27. So, Haley is 21 years old. She's 20 or 21. She's got a long trajectory to become a much stronger athlete and continue to work on that strength. Strength, as you guys know, it's not like, I can build up this aerobic capacity over 2 or 3 months or 6 months. Strength takes sometimes years for athletes to develop. And it depends on where their body is in developing that strength, not just whether they're, continuing to lift with the barbell.
Yeah, you could put Haley Adams in one of those interstellar hypersleep pods for like half a decade and then pop her out and, she'd still be ready to go.
Okay. All right. I want to talk about something that we were talking about earlier today, Tommy, when we were live on Instagram, and that's Patrick Vellner, struggling a little bit with a groin injury that he's been nagging him for the last couple of weeks. And it seems like that has affected a little bit of his squatting. And this has been a squat heavy weekend. You have heavier frame with the 115-pound thruster. You've got overhead squats. You've got the front squat. None of these numbers and times seem to really match up with what our expectations of where we would hit on some of these figures. But it looks like, he's probably out of that spot unless if everything shakes out in one of those regional-esque cascading effects. He's at 325 points, which puts him 67 points outside of a qualifying position. That's honestly something I just don't see happening. What about you guys?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I have him at 33 points back.
That is correct.
Which is
that right?
Crazier things have happened. Cole Sager has overcome.
Yes, you're right. He is 33 points. You're right. He is 33 points. Excuse me. I should be able to leave my own read. Yeah,
it's possible, but man, I did not. I mean, it makes sense given the groin injury, but like if you look at Pat's finish on Nasty Nancy at 21:18, that is not indicative of the fitness that he has. He is a sub 20 athlete in that workout when he's healthy, most times, in his sleep. So clearly something's wrong, and that groin is affecting him, especially probably when you're trying to grind out not just the squats, but the running too. If that groin starts to tighten up, that's going to affect your stride. That's going to affect, you saw a lot of athletes on the burpee, they come up with that split leg.
Yeah.
If your groin is knotted up, that's another way where you're going to feel it, and you're just going to be uncomfortable a lot sooner than a lot of these athletes were. And it's possible that we maybe saw him throttle down a little bit in that workout. And it's just unfortunate because, here's someone who has done really well outside of anywhere but the games, and you feel like he's definitely got more to give, and he has proven that in the past.
Yeah, I would second that, especially going into this final event. I would peg a performance from Pat Vellner to be a top 3 performance in Awful Annie if it was just on paper, just solely looking at his performance in open workouts that are almost exactly the same. I mean, there was a double under toes to bar heavy clean workout in the open, and he murked it the last time it showed up. So, I would say that he has like a top 3 finish in that workout available to him if he's healthy and fit, and he's clearly fit. But if his groin's acting up, I mean, that if an adductor is strained, it's going to be a problem on the GHD sit-ups. It's going to be a problem much for your clean, and that just makes it. I would say tragic, because Vellner is the type of athlete who would excel in person competition, and it's just a huge bummer. Like, this is part of the sport. It sucks. Yep. People get hurt, and it is what it is.
Yeah, and speaking of injuries, David Shrunky, I don't think it was announced on the update show, but David Shrunky withdrew after completing Nancy, this morning or in the AM his time, a back issue that kind of flared up and probably exacerbated as a result of doing Diane yesterday, which is obviously a very back intensive workout. And Nancy with the running and the overhead squatting and then the hip hinging, has a tendency to light up your lower back. Armen and I may know something a little bit about that from our little run and gun a couple of days ago. But he is officially withdrawn from the competition, but he's the only athlete who's actually withdrawn. And, which is a little atypical. Usually a couple of injuries. Athletes are coming into this a little bit banged up, as they're going through a lot of intensive training, and that has a tendency to wear down the body a little bit, but everyone seems to be relatively healthy. But as far as updates, David Shrunky did withdraw. He was 27th place when he did bow out of the competition, so he didn't complete the 7th and final workout. Speaking of the 7th and final workout, most athletes have actually completed this, and some athletes are doing it right now, and in only about 2 hours, we're going to know the results for who the live 5 are. So let's start talking about the bubble athletes. We've got athletes like Kristen Holta, Amanda Barnhart, Carrie Pierce, Cara Saunders, and then 51 points out, Andrea Nisler in 9th place. This is on the women's side. What kind of stuff are you looking for here? Who would you be taking as some of your picks for getting into this live 5?
You want to go, Armen?
No, you go first.
Okay. It's for this one. It's tough. Assuming that Amanda Barnhart doesn't have a problem with GHDs, and actually, I feel like GHDs are one of those movements where sometimes an athlete like Amanda, who has tremendously long arms, can actually benefit from as long as you're like breaking that parallel arc, but the distance your arms can kind of snap back and tap the ground and cover that distance faster. I've seen some longer athletes actually benefit pretty well from GHDs, and that like the strength of her hips and her, all the musculature up around her hip flexors and everything like that. She's obviously a tremendous power athlete. So I assume, at least from the strength standpoint, the muscle fatigue across 150 GHD shouldn't be a problem. But then, I mean, let's be honest, she's going to power clean that barbell. She might hold on. She might hold on to everything after the round of 5. Assuming she's just trying to, save a little bit of gas in that first round, and maybe that's where she could make up some ground if she's a little bit slower. She's chasing a couple of. I don't know how Holta's going to be able to handle that barbell. The clean is typically not a strong movement for her, and I think she'll probably have to go below parallel on at least 2 to 3 reps. That's maybe where Amanda can make her move, assuming everyone handles the drag.
It's sort of similar for Haley Adams, I would imagine, too.
Yeah, but I think Haley is. We've talked about this a little bit. A cornerstone of Rich Froning's program is doing a bazillion GHDs every single week, and that is a scientific number.
Every Tuesday.
Down to the last 0.
Every Tuesday, GHDs.
Exactly. And so she's going to be able to, I think, conserve enough energy comfortably in those elements to maybe grit through the cleans just enough. And she's also got a little bit of a point buffer ahead of Holta to at least allow herself to comfortably try and fit into the top 10 and not worry about losing. Yeah,
25 points, which is huge. I mean, that's the difference between 1st and 8th.
Yeah, and that point spread grows with her leeway. Her best finish needed grows every athlete that finishes ahead of the people chasing her. So you assume Tia's probably going to win this one, and you assume at least one other athlete is going to kick the doors off of this. Then that just extends her points lead just a little bit.
Yeah, when I look at the women's leaderboard and we're talking about bubble athletes, the real question to me is who in the top 5 could slip out. Haley prefers power cleans over squat cleans, and the fact that this is written as a clean anyhow is probably just fireworks in her mind. She's excited about that, I would imagine. So Kristen Holta, in my opinion, is the athlete in the top 5 that has the most chance of slipping out of that position. I would say, obviously, with Amanda Barnhart right on her heels, a 7-point difference. That is clearly the favorite in trying to sort of switch that spot around. But I don't want to say something like way out of left field here. I think Andrea Nisler might be able to push herself up higher onto the leaderboard as an athlete that has done so well on teams and is, in my opinion,
she's extremely strong.
Yeah, underrated in her strength.
Oh, yeah.
this is the exact type of event that I think she would want to see when she's on the outside looking in, because I think she would probably feel that she could knock this into home run and really earn her spot.
It's a sneaky
yeah.
pick.
Well, here's here's a couple things I think to keep in mind. Well, first, we haven't talked about Carrie Pierce. Now, I don't think the GHC is going to be any issue for Carrie Pierce. Not one of the stronger athletes, so when it comes to clean, especially when you compare that to heavy lifters that there are in the field right now that she's got to contend with, that could come between her and other athletes that she's got to chase. She's only 10 points out, but she's behind Amanda Barnhart, who is head and shoulders a stronger athlete, especially when it comes to cycling the barbell. But Carr, Saunders, Nisler, Spiegel, all three athletes that have wildly heavy cleans, and I feel like can create some distance. And so when we're looking at, how does the leaderboard shake out, it's not just, 7 points away from the next competitor, Kristen Holta. It's how many of these competitors come in between. And I think there's a few of these athletes, when it comes to the barbell, they're going to have absolutely no problem with. And I'm looking at those and I'm saying, all right, if they come in and the GHCs are no issues and they don't trip up on this rope, which has had a tendency to kind of just be an odd object. And if you mess up a couple of times and you get fatigued with it, it could create a larger distance between these athletes. But let's go ahead and talk about the men here for a minute before we have Annie Thorisdottir join us. We've got, obviously, the top two athletes, Matthew Fraser and Noah Olson, way ahead. They practically don't even need to show up and do this. Noah still should, but Fraser's squarely in the qualifying spot. But things get a little bit tighter after that. Medeiros, he's in a very strong position. We've got Sam Quant, Janikowski, tied with Chandler Smith. Mm-hmm. Number 5 and number 6 are tied, though the tiebreaker goes to Janikowski. They're both at 358 points apiece. 6 points back is Jeffrey Adler. 16 points back is BKG. 19 points back, Baden Brown in 9th. And Vellner's 33 points back. We actually have a pretty tight men's field in this bubble position. And this feels a lot more like a regionals environment. Not quite winning you're in, but for Jeffrey Adler, that would probably be the case, especially since, well, the separation is 100 points for first place and 96 points for second place. So Adler's almost a win and you're in kind of situation.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, even just like go beyond just that initial group too. If you look at Yona in 5th and Sam Cornier in 13th, I mean, that's 47 points. That's 47 points. That's about what Cole made up, but I think in 2016 in the last event. Obviously, all the chips fell into line perfectly for that. But if you want an example of just how kind of topsy-turvy this men's field outside of the top few has been, you just look at that. Like, Baden Brown looked like he was cruising, through yesterday, basically.
Yep.
Vellner, BKG both looked like they were dead in the water, at least at one point during this weekend. And, everyone in between, Sam Quant, nobody was paying attention to him. Janikowski, no one was really paying attention to him. It's just been kind of all over the place. And I am really curious to see this last one, because the nature of having, I don't know, maybe it's a byproduct of not having as deep of a field traditionally in a way that's predictable. That means that there's a lot of X factors and variables out there, like you said, for the women's division, Justin, that could just maybe hit one out of the park. They could pull the old, Benny the Jet Rodriguez and just close their eyes and put one in the glove and ruin somebody's weekend. It's entirely possible. I think it's exciting, and
it is exciting. You know what this, Armen? Sorry, I want to give you an opportunity to weigh in here, but this reminds me of, and this just, I know we're getting a little bit off topic here, and it's my fault, but this reminds me a lot of regionals, but more the drama of the qualification spot, which the sanctionals environment hasn't had as much of, because there's only one spot allotted to each event, and so it's sort of like, somebody is usually really far ahead and they're just kind of walking away with it. Or it's not even the first 4 people. It's like the person who's in 5th. But the drama of that doesn't quite play out. But here we have this because like we pointed out here on the men's division, between 5th qualifying, which is tied, by the way, to 14th is 53 points. And 53 points is a lot, but it's not as if it's never happened before. And that, by the way, is Tim Paulson sitting in 14th place. And this is cool because we haven't had this as much with this drama and this opportunity. I think that after this event, there's going to be a big just shift in the leaderboard. And that's kind of cool to watch, especially from the sports standpoint, because we just haven't had as much of that drama playing out.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Armen jump in right after this, but we're also talking about prize money, right?
Yeah.
Like the difference between, 10th place gets $21,000 versus 14th, gets 14. So you're talking about a 50% increase if you're able to make a push on this last event and earn yourself, a little extra pocket change to head to Vegas to with your boys. But that's significant, especially for a lot of these athletes that, they're looking forward to the game. This is a big earning opportunity.
This is a big earning opportunity. Armen, what about you? How are you seeing the kind of the bubble playing out here?
I've got eyes on a couple athletes here. When we look at Justin Medeiros and Sam Quant, I think between the two of them, I would say Quant is probably safer. Even though Medeiros has a nearly 20-point lead over Sam, he's just a smaller athlete. And obviously, third place with a 437-pound front squat, not an issue for him. But this is the type of thing where just one slip up, one extra squat clean is going to be the difference. That's going to be the decider. I mean, at the end of this entire weekend, we can put all the videos side by side, and I guarantee you it's going to be one squat clean versus one power clean that makes the difference between who makes it on the bubble. So, a smaller athlete is a little disadvantaged with a situation like that. So when I look at Medeiros, when I look at Quant, when I look at Koski, I think Quant probably has the best chance of holding on to one of those top 5 spots between the three of those athletes. And the athletes that are right on the verge of getting in there, I do not want to have Jeff Adler or BKG breathing down my neck with this event. I mean, this has both of their names written all over it. Adler is essentially pistons attached to abs attached to pecs. Like that is the body. And the fact that this is just do some double unders and then muscle clean 275 a bunch of times, he's probably salivating, thinking about the possibility.
Well, let's not forget he is the one who beat Matt Frazier by a minute in the clean and jerk workout in the CrossFit Open. I think that was 20.4. He beat Matt Frazier by a minute in that workout. So it's clear the guy loves a heavy barbell. He did
pretty good.
He second place at Dubai CrossFit Championship, just a few kilos behind Tola Moraquinho. But of the athletes in the field, he probably boasts the heaviest of the athletes in this part of the field. He probably boasts the heaviest clean and jerk. So I don't think the weight is going to be any issue for him. He has, he's just, look, I would be putting my money on Adler.
I mean, honestly, just looking at
6 points back,
the execution that we see out of Adler this weekend has been surprisingly veteran. I mean, the guy was kind of an unknown last year. He didn't do exceptionally well, but he didn't do poorly. He just was an unknown. He's just a new guy.
Yeah.
But this year he's playing this game as if he knows that he belongs in that top 5. And that's a dangerous place to be when you have that type of fitness to back up that mentality. And again, BKG, the guy's a surgeon. I mean, he is a menacing assassin of fitness. There's no other way to describe him. He lives in the backwoods.
The metaphors on today's show are so.
He's like Mads Mikkelsen in some sort of really awesome assassin movie.
I'm just waiting for a solid Sylvester Stallone reference here. That's Jason not Rocky.
Yeah. I mean, BKG is the guy who you expect can do 400 unbroken double unders with that drag rope because he's been practicing it for the past 2 years in secret, right? You just know that that's just what his deal is. So. I'm really excited to see the execution here because, like Tommy said, this is probably the first time on the men's side in a situation like this we've had a feeling of this regionals fight to win and earn your way to the games type situation, which is pretty dope.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that coming out. And for those who are watching, it's only about 90 minutes until we're going to get the scores for this, if I'm not mistaken. So. This is a big deal. We're going to have Annie joining us here in just a second. But one of the questions I've seen come up a lot is about the point spread, and particularly when it goes to stage 2 of competition. Now, we've never had a CrossFit Games that's existed in different stages. So what is happening here, for those who are kind of catching up, it's that the top 5 from this stage of the competition online are going to be advancing to what Tommy likes to call the Live 5. And they're going to be competing at the CrossFit Ranch in Aromas, California in about a month. Now, the points don't carry over from this competition. It's actually going to reset. So it's essentially stage 2 or a new competition. Everything starts from 0. But one thing that I think is very interesting, I'll get you guys' take on this real quick, which is the point spread. It's the biggest point spread that we've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting enough that like it's going to the one difference obviously is at the top between first and second. So there's that 25-point drop, and then it drops down to 20. So giving a little bit of that extra kind of incentive to go out there and notch an event win, just to build a little bit of that 5-point buffer if you start mixing it up between second and fifth. I think that's typically in line with how the point spread has been at the games in past years, doing that 6-point spread down to 5. It used to be 5 back in 2011, and they shifted it around 2015. And so I think that they're trying to find a way to give an advantage to athletes that go out and perform at the best of their craft. That's typically been something that's been talked about behind the scenes in years past as well, is rewarding those who go out and seek the tip of the spear in any given test.
As if Fraser and Toomey needed more buffers between the athletes that they're competing against. Yeah. As we've seen so far, it's clear that they do not. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Annie in here. She's coming all the way from Iceland. Annie Thorisdottir, 2-time CrossFit Games champion. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, my pleasure. I'm sorry about the look. I came straight from the bike.
You look fantastic.
You're looking great.
I wish I looked like that when I got off a bike too. A lot more red usually.
Annie, thanks again so much for joining us. We've got the final day of competition that's going on in the CrossFit Games. I know Sarah and BKG have already finished, and it's a little bit later in the day there in Reykjavik. But what have you been seeing this weekend so far that's been kind of interesting? Talk us through some of the performances that you've seen that have kind of been surprising a little bit to you, and just kind of weigh in a little bit on the game so far.
Oh, I don't know what's necessary. Well, that's a hard question. I don't know necessarily what's surprising. Well, the top 5, I put Pat Vellner up there and BKG, and it was like hard after day 1 to see how it was standing. Well, after especially the first 2 events, and then the same with Sarah and Katrin, they were really stressing me out with that. I am like, Katrin is one of these athletes that it doesn't matter where she's at on the leaderboard. Like, that's one of the things that I have her as a role model with, is like, she just doesn't give up. We're competing against each other, and I might be in the lead, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to take this. Like, I'm so far ahead. But for some reason, she'll like continue to push. And that's exactly what we saw today. And I was kind of expecting that today. And it's so good to see her there on getting through. Obviously, like, I haven't talked to Sarah, so I don't know exactly what came up there, but she is so good, and I would have loved to see her there in the top 5 as well as BKG. I am hoping that he's going to make it through. I'm obviously like a little bit, what's the right word? Not impartial. But I don't want to say who I would want to drop from the top 5, but I do think that it's going to come between Janikowski, Chandler Smith, and Björkman to fight for that spot. It is Yanni's to lose, and he is good at these movements too. So I think, yeah, like you said, everyone is done that I know. Like, here in Iceland, they're done. Katrin finished. I actually managed to watch her. She sent the Zoom link through, so we could like watch her live when she was doing it. So she's done. So you're just kind of waiting for those final results. I think I was very surprised by the leaderboard after day 1. I was just expecting a little bit more. I was expecting a little different names on the top. Obviously, it depends a little bit on the events, but then it's also the environment that the athletes have. And it's so hard to know when you do this. You get that one chance, and you might think that you did really good, but then, yeah, it turns out not to be. Like, this is a hard way to compete, but it's also such a great mental test then with this kind of competition.
Annie, I've got a question about an athlete in particular that maybe reminds me a little bit of you back in the day. So for anyone at home that doesn't remember, in 2009, you showed up to the ranch at 19 years old, just starting out your adult life at the top of the sport pretty much. And we have an athlete in Haley Adams that 2 years in, at just 20 years old, is, kind of in that similar vein as a young athlete that's really coming up. What stands out to you when you see Haley competing, and what stands out about her as an athlete? And maybe give us a little insight of what it's like being, a top tier athlete in a sport at such a young age.
I'm not going to say that she surprised me because she is so impressive. She is so good. Mm-hmm. But what stressed me out a little bit when I saw her do so good at her first CrossFit Games was that, is she going to be able to keep her head in it? Is the pressure going to get to her? Does she think that she's good enough now that she's not going to push herself as much in training and so on? And that's where things get really hard, is when there's more eyes on you. Other people put more pressure on you. Sponsors may start putting pressure on you, and you put even more pressure on yourself because all of a sudden it might be a disappointment not being on that podium or top 5 or top 10 or whatever that goal is. And you always want to improve and become better. So I was nervous about her doing so great her first games. And I was so happy to see the mindset that she managed to have through. And we've seen it's not a fluke. Like, she is this good and she needs to believe that. And I think she's getting to that point where she knows she's supposed to be up there, and she is one of the best females. So I think that's amazing. Like, that is one of the hardest things. I remember, especially when I won the games in the second year when I competed, it was really hard mentally because the pressure that you put on yourself at that point, anything other than winning, was a disappointment to me. And when I wasn't doing as good as I wanted to quit. And being able to fight through that and find, I think, especially for the girls, like, we need to enjoy it. We need to have fun. And a lot of us just enjoy competing and we enjoy pushing our boundaries. And I think she found that. And I think that's the important thing. And that's what I think is really interesting. Even just when I see new people come into the gym, or new people not coming into the gym, but new people getting better and better, starting to compete. And they're like, oh my God, it's so much fun. You get so much better every single time you get to the gym. And then it's so easy to stay motivated. It's so easy to continue pushing. And then it gets hard because now you're going to have to work more and more for each increment. Like, your PRs, it might take you a year to get your number up. You get more consistent, but it might take you so long. And that's where I think it's interesting to see the people that continue through that. Those are the people that are going to be good, because those are the people that have the right mindset and they have the head to continue pushing and are patient. Sorry, that was a really long answer to that.
Great.
That's like Haley. She's got that.
Totally.
That's awesome to hear that. Annie, congratulations on motherhood, on the baby, the healthy baby. That's fantastic. Because of that, you find yourself kind of on the outside of the competitive end of the season this year, but you did help out as one of the athlete advisory council members. And I'm curious what, you've stepped away from that role with a promise to come back. And I know a lot of us are excited to see you back in the competitive field, but tell us a little bit about what that was like, being a part of that athlete advisory council. What were the conversations like? What types of things were you helping out with? What were they asking for your perspective on?
Well, I don't think I'm allowed to go into details about it, but I think it's a great step towards making the competition better, more fair. Like, some of the things that we were talking about was what things might come up and what things might be fair or unfair, the appeal process, scoring. Obviously, having competed at the CrossFit Games, I want to say 10 times. 10 times.
Starting to lose track.
Now I'm like, there's one here in between that I didn't compete. Yeah. So having that, obviously there's a lot of things that have come up and a lot of things where like, oh, if this would have been done that way, or a movement that you're like, oh, that's a really tough movement to judge, and these things might come up. And as an athlete, we try to figure out things to make things easier or faster or better, and like being able to maybe put some of those so that there's definitely rules in place for some of those things, and timing issues, for example, like when that would be for this online event, what would be a fair way to have it. And we came to a conclusion that it would be the most fair that everyone would go at not the same time, but same time in their region. Like some of these things we were talking about, and it were great conversations, and we're going to continue. I'm still on the board. This board is going to stay the same until the 31st of December. And that way we get to talk a little bit, like we started talking a little bit about the next season. Obviously, it's not like I can influence it in any way that's going to be beneficial for me. We're just talking, and it's not me just going like, oh, this should be like this. Like we get to have a conversation, and I'm not the one that makes a decision in any way. But it feels good that we can have an open dialogue about things. And it has been really good front and back, and things have changed with the input from the four of us. I think it's a really good mix that we got there. So I'm excited to be a part of it. Also because I have very strong opinions about a lot of these things. Like I said, with having this many years, there's a lot of things that have come up and a lot of things that hopefully can improve and have been improving throughout the years. So I think it's an exciting time for CrossFit and a really exciting time for the CrossFit athletes.
Yeah, I mean, having had a lot of conversations with the athletes on the PFAA side as that was developing, I think it's very important, to have athletes such as yourself with a decade of competitive experience weighing in on things, especially since not only is your perspective as a competitor really valuable, but the sport itself has changed. You've changed with the sport as it's grown, as it's adapted, as it's globalized. And I see that, and I know a lot of athletes feel like it's very important to have athletes' perspectives in the development process. And so I know that what we've been hearing is that that's a very good thing that's been developed in the last couple of months.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's the same as an athlete and a coach. We make each other better by giving each other input. And that's the way the sport should continue going as well. Because it's so hard to see the other side of the table. So now we're starting to see and get different perspectives. And I also get a little bit of a different perspective, seeing some of the things that they need to be thinking about that I had never really thought about myself. And the same when we had the sanctioned event here in Iceland, there were so many things that came up that I had never thought about as an athlete. This is just ready and it's planned and it just works out when I'm competing. But there's a lot of logistics and a lot of things behind the scenes, and it gives everyone a different perspective in a good way.
Annie, I know you're going to have to go here in a minute, but I want to give Armen and Tommy an opportunity to ask one last question each.
Sure thing. Kind of touching on that perspective that you talked about, I would say the last few months for everyone in the community has been pretty tumultuous. I would say what is the kind of sense that you have now about the future of the sport and the future both of the greater CrossFit community as someone that's involved at the affiliate level and the sport level, even at the event level, given everything that's happened and where we have managed to kind of find ourselves in now with the games going on this weekend, something we thought might not get to happen in 2020?
Well, if I'm understanding your question correctly, then I'm very positive about the future of the sport. And I think some of the things that we've been talking about and going through now are things that had to change for the sport to be able to evolve and become a real sport. Speaking for myself, I feel like it was starting to, I don't want to say go down necessarily, but at least stay in place. And there was a lot of frustration that has started building up, both within affiliates and within the athletes. And I feel like we're starting to understand each other, talk together. And I feel like this sport is going to grow. The CrossFit Games are going to become bigger and better. The affiliates are going to get more support and more communication with CrossFit, not just stand alone, but it's going to be more of a united movement that's going to be there together. So I am really positive about the changes that have happened this year. And it was necessary. It was really hard because we all care so much about this. And I know you guys do too. And it felt like heartbreaking. It felt like it was going to be like one of the worst breakups you've gone through. But it ended up being hopefully a fairy tale and going to end the right way. I feel like that's the path that we're going on now.
Yeah,
Armen.
I agree. I also feel a little hopeful about the future in a really cool sense that I haven't had in a while. For me, I think I'm curious. This is the first time we've seen this sort of cut to 5 and then a bunch of time off and then the actual finals taking place. How would you, as the competitor that you are, use that time in between this final set of the online stage events and then going into the in-person, because there just isn't time to sort of come down and then have any sort of real training and come back up. So, what's your advice to the athletes that are going to be making it to how to deal with that?
Well, you have a little bit of a time. I would definitely do a very easy week the week after for your body and your mind to recover. It's a lot of stress. And I think that takes a bigger toll than a lot of people realize, is that the feeling that you have after a competition, even though your body might not be completely destroyed, your mental state is not in the right place, and you want to make sure that you recover properly for that. And then training for this online event is more like training for regionals. You do a lot of CrossFit and barbells and like these couplets and triplets and inside the gym workouts. Now getting ready for the CrossFit Games, like I would make sure that I'm ready for CrossFit event for this online stage. And then now I would focus on doing more swimming, fine-tuning a little bit outside running, doing a little bit of odd objects, climbing, going obstacle course. Like now it's time to do stuff like that. It's not necessarily where you need to push yourself because you've already worked on that conditioning. You're already ready to go. Like these athletes are ready to go at this point. They're peaking now. They have a small time to dip. And then they're going to start building up a little bit again, just making sure that the nervous system and the body is ready to go. But yeah, now it's a little bit more outside of the gym, like when you used to get ready for the CrossFit Games.
Awesome. Annie, you've been so generous with your time. Thank you so much. Congratulations on your becoming a mom. That is awesome.
Thank you.
It's been cool to see that journey, and we're looking so much forward to watching you come back to the competitive fitness. And so I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to catch up with you later. But thank you again, Annie, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Annie.
Thank you. All right, gentlemen. So we've got about 90, no, not even 90 minutes. An hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Hour and 10 minutes. We got 70 minutes until Event 7 results come in, and we'll have a complete picture as to who's going to be making it into the top 5. I know that CrossFit Games is going to be going live with their update show with Sean Woodland, Andy Sakamoto, and Nikki Brazier. Any last words?
Oh, hold on to your butts.
There's another one. It's just
I had to get a Samuel Jackson quote in there. And that's
beautiful.
That's probably the most PC Sam Jackson quote I could get in there. So
I'm just gonna second that. That's fantastic. And you know what? To the athletes that don't make it, I guess is left the ha ha ha. Didn't say the magic word.
Yeah. Oh man. Love it.
Mark, who doesn't love '90s movies? Come on.
I love '90s movies. I don't even know what to say. I'm speechless at this point. We've had Sandlot, Samuel Jackson. Who else?
Several wonderful generic action movies with like murderous, Northern Europeans. It's great. It's perfect.
Well, that about rounds it up, because I don't think there's anything I could possibly say to top that at this point. And I guess we're going to find out who's going to be going to the CrossFit Games in Aromas, California in about an hour and 10 minutes. So tune in, games.crossfit.com, youtube.com/, I'm sure it's CrossFit HQ. And, well, we'll see you guys again soon.